The story of Richard Dawkins. Once upon a time, in a place called Nairobi, there was a baby born on March 26, 1941. His name was Richard Dawkins. Richard grew up in a place called England, and even when he was a little boy, he loved learning about nature and science. He was very curious. He asked questions about everything around him. Why do flowers grow? How do birds fly? Why is the sky blue? He wanted to know how the world worked. As Richard grew older, he studied a lot about animals, plants, and even how the human body works. He loved reading books about science, especially the ideas of a famous scientist named Charles Darwin. Darwin was the man who thought of the idea of evolution, how animals and plants change over time to fit their environment. Richard was very excited to learn more about this, and he decided that he wanted to be a scientist too. Richard went to school and studied biology, which is the study of living things. He worked hard and became a very smart scientist. But Richard didn't just want to study animals and plants. He also wanted to understand how everything in life, including people, worked. He wanted to know how life began and how everything fit together. Richard had big questions, and he was ready to find answers. When Richard became an adult, he started teaching at a university. He talked to students about science and how important it is to ask questions and look for answers. He told his students that science was about understanding the world around us, using our brains and our eyes to explore. Richard believed that the more we learned, the better we could take care of the world. One of Richard's biggest ideas was about how living things like animals and plants are connected through something called genes. Genes are tiny parts inside all living things that make them who they are. Richard thought that genes played a big role in how life changed over time. He believed that we can learn a lot about life by studying how genes work. Richard wrote a book called The Selfish Gene. In this book, he explained that genes are like tiny workers in our bodies. They want to make copies of themselves to make sure life keeps going. He said that even though we think of ourselves as being in charge of our bodies, it is really our genes that are the ones doing the work. They help us grow and change. Richard's book made people think differently about life. He helped people see that genes are very important to how life works. After his book, Richard wrote many other books to explain more about science and the world. One of his most famous books was called The God Delusion. In this book, Richard talked about how science and religion are different. He believed that we could understand the world through science, instead of relying on beliefs that we can't see or prove. Richard wanted people to use their brains to think for themselves and find answers to big questions. Even though Richard's ideas were not always easy for everyone to understand, he never stopped explaining what he believed. He worked hard to help people see the world through the lens of science. Richard thought that if we understood how the world worked, we would take better care of it. He believed that science helped us grow and helped us help each other. Richard Dawkins loved teaching people about science and always encouraged others to ask big questions. He wanted to inspire people, especially young people, to learn more and think for themselves. He knew that if we wanted to understand the world and make it better, we needed to be curious and ask questions. Just like he had done when he was a little boy. As Richard got older, he became very famous. People all over the world knew his name because of his books, his ideas, and his love for science. He traveled to many different countries, giving talks and helping people understand science better. But Richard didn't care about being famous. He cared about making the world a better place by teaching people to think and learn. Richard's story teaches us an important lesson. Never stop being curious. Just like Richard, we can ask questions, explore the world, and learn new things. The more we understand, the more we can help each other and make the world a better place. Richard Dawkins showed us that science isn't just about facts. It's about exploring the world with curiosity and a desire to learn. Today, Richard Dawkins is known as one of the world's most important scientists. His work and his ideas have inspired many people to think about life in new ways. Even though his ideas were sometimes hard to understand, Richard never gave up on teaching people. He spent his whole life helping others learn, grow, and be curious.